Hello and welcome to the Living Life Differently podcast. We are the Mahojos. I'm Amy.
And I'm Ali, and we live in a static caravan on a farm in South Wales with our son Ollie and our dog Dizzy.
We're currently on a year off together, waiting patiently to get going on a European campervan adventure.
In the meantime, we decided to set up this podcast to share stories of women who are living life differently, women who are doing things different to the norm.
So if you're feeling a little stuck in life or need confidence to make some big changes, then keep listening as we have some brilliant guests.
In this episode, we speak with Zoe Langley-Wathen, who left her career in teaching to follow her passions.
As well as a big career change, she moved onto a narrowboat full-time. Enjoy her inspirational story.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Living Life Differently podcast. And I'm delighted to welcome today a lady called Zoe Langley-Wathen. Hi Zoe.
Hey Ali, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you.
Good. So I think we've come across each other before, or kind of followed each other's adventures, because I've listened to you on the Tough Girl podcast. You did a couple of episodes now, a few years ago. So I think that's how we've kind of come across each other. And you describe yourself as a writer, speaker and adventure seeker. Could you tell us a bit more about yourself in terms of, what that means, what age you are and where you're living at the moment?
Yes, yeah, no problem. So I guess I have morphed into those roles because a few years ago, not so long ago, I was teaching almost full time. I've been in my teaching role for 13 years, and I just took a complete pivot and thought I've got to change some things here. I'd lost my dad in 2018 and just felt that there was more to life. I think a lot of people get this. And so I had a life-changing experience with a long distance walk I did 10 years ago on the Southwest Coast Path. That gradually built up and up with further long distance walks that I'd been doing. So the Wales Coast Path in 2012, Offa's in 2013, and so they carried on. And with each walk that I did, I started to realise that it actually wasn't necessarily about what walk am I going to do next. It like train spotting, which walk am I going to tick off to say that I've done them all. It was actually the act of walking and the need for a focus and the challenge that I was thriving on. And I thought, well, if I'm experiencing this, then other women need to experience this as well, because I'm not a person who lacks in confidence necessarily, but I think I am a person who has suffered with a lack of belief in myself, and that's what these walks gave me, was this momentum and this injection of self-belief that I can do this. So I left my teaching role in 2019 with nothing to go to. So that was a huge leap of faith. I was absolutely terrified, still had a mortgage to pay for, but I did it knowing that I was hopefully going to rely on supply teaching, sort of 2 or 3 days a week to back up that bank balance. And nothing came for sort of 5 or 6 weeks. Work-wise, and then it did start to flow. It started to come in, but I'd left with the view to us moving from our house into a narrowboat 100 miles away in South Wales. So I was living in Poole in Dorset at the time, and we've moved to South Wales, rented out the house, and yeah, that was yet another big leap, but it did give us the opportunity to, I guess, take control of our lives a bit more, take control of our finances, and just see things from a different perspective. So that's where I am now. So midlife adventurer, I guess I am looking for not massive great big expeditions necessarily, although that would be wonderful, but clearly during these times it's not possible. But I'm just looking for things that will challenge me as a person, things that will challenge my perspective of what I think I'm capable of. And so they can be small, everyday challenges, not necessarily big expeditions. And I'm writing because of lockdown now. I've really knuckled down and I've started writing. I had a chapter published in a book last year, and I have been blogging, not so regularly since I've been writing my book, but there are some blogs on my website as well about what I've been up to. So yes, that's me in a very big nutshell. I'm sorry that was a little bit longer than I planned it to be, but hopefully it describes kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And there's a couple of big things in there which I obviously want to come back to because they link in really nicely with the theme of living life differently. So just for the people listening, we're recording this right now and you're actually on the narrowboat, is that correct?
I am, yes.
And which canal are you on?
We're on the Monmouthshire-Brecon Canal, Ali. So it's a 35-mile landlocked canal. It's not connected to any of the main system canals. It starts at Pontypool in South Wales and ends in Brecon.
Brilliant. We know that canal quite well because we did a couple of family relays along there fairly recently. We had this crazy idea that as a family with the dog, the baby and the camper van and our bikes, we could kind of do sections of it, one at a time and make our way up the 35 miles. I won't tell you what happened. I'll send you the links to the YouTube videos.
I'd love to see that. You probably will have passed us then, no doubt.
Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure we did, probably twice. So yeah, but I'll send you those links because it didn't quite go to plan the first time. Like some adventures, they just don't happen the way you think.
And if they don't, that's okay because they make the best stories.
Oh yeah, 100%. But yeah, no doubt we've probably travelled past you, and what a fantastic canal to live on. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. It's fantastic.
So past life was as a teacher, and was that down in Dorset?
It was, yes.
Yeah. And so how long had you been a teacher? Was that something you did from when you left uni, or how did you get into that?
No, I went to uni as a mature student. That was quite a big thing for me. I guess I started my retraining or my re-education, if you like, in the late 90s. And I started at school as an art technician, but my degree was fine art. So I started as an art technician in a school, but knew that I really, really enjoyed sharing and teaching and helping the students. And it just really lent itself well to becoming a teacher. And so I was offered the option of training on the job. So it was a graduate teacher program. I was paid to do my teacher training whilst I was working, which as a mum as well suited me perfectly because I couldn't really afford to go off to do my teacher training in the regular way. And yeah, so I did that round about 2004, 2005. 2005. So my role as art technician was absolutely wonderful, gave me a good insight into what the students wanted, gave me great insight into organising trips, and we did a couple of residential trips to New York and Barcelona, which I got to organise, so that was great experience for me as well. And yeah, so then I went into my teacher training in 2005, 2006, and then my 13 years from there through to when I left the school that I was at for 13 years. That was around about 2019.
Okay. And you mentioned, getting to the point where you realise that there might be a bit more to life. And, I assume that kind of fed into your decision about leaving teaching. Was that a gradual process, or was it a light bulb moment one day? What was kind of going on for you at the time?
Yeah, no, I think it was a gradual process, if I'm honest. Teaching is very full on anyway. And I never do things by halves. So if I'm going to do something, I want it to be done properly. That's not always a good thing. It's a sign of perfectionism, and I taught students that were like that as well. But I can't help the way I am. I did always throw myself into these things, and what it meant was that I was starting to suffer burnout. I absolutely love the act of teaching, the act of helping an individual to develop, to grow, to learn, and to achieve and enjoy the journey of achieving. And I just thought there must be other ways of doing this. And as time went on, because I'd been doing these challenge walks, I would get up and talk about them in assemblies at school. And I would get feedback from that, and I really found I got a buzz from getting that feedback, and then from learning years later when I'd bump into students that I taught a long time ago that said, "Oh, I remember that assembly you gave on XYZ, it might have been the time I walked the Southwest Coast Path." And then she'd say, "And I've gone off and done a section of it myself, or I've gone off and backpacked for a year around India as a result of you giving that talk." That really filled me with such passion and encouragement, I guess, that just me, little me, could make a difference, even if it was only a seed of a difference. And I think as teachers, we are actors, because it's like standing on stage, in front of the class, and we are like salespeople because we have to be persuasive. We have to kind of get our point across in the most persuasive way we possibly can for the students to engage with it and to really believe it. And I think that all of these things started to feed into what I was now delivering about. Go and try something new, take risks, don't be afraid of failing, have a go. And that was where I could see myself leaning towards more than doing the data analysis and the reports home to parents and all of the other stuff that comes along as part and parcel of being a teacher.
What a great opportunity to have almost that platform within the school to be able to share your experiences of your incredible long distance walks and share those messages of getting out of your comfort zone, doing something that maybe scares you or challenges you. Do you think that the more you talked about that to your students, the more you were almost telling yourself, almost giving yourself permission to kind of try and do something new and different with your own life?
Yes, I think that is coming back to your previous question as well, where that drip feeding over time came into this is what I can do. The more you tell somebody something, the more it becomes believable and the more you start realizing it. And it's not just telling the students, but it's in telling the students, they tell their parents, and then the parents sit with you at parents' evening, and for 50% of the time they're talking about the student, and certain parents then for 50% of the time wanted to hear about the next challenge walk. So there was a lot of that happened. And I think it did become something that I gradually had to talk myself into. And there's been a lot of that, I guess, throughout my life, where although I can be impulsive, some things I have to work my way into slowly because I think around the subject a lot, I research it a lot, and I want to find out if it fits, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. When you were teaching, and you kind of were starting to move towards a way of thinking that this might not be for you for the rest of your life, for example, what was life like outside of teaching? I mean, we've got a really good friend who was in secondary school teaching for some time, and we know the hours and hours and hours she used to put in, getting in early, coming home late, working on weekends. Did you have much life outside of work at the time, or was that a struggle?
It was a struggle. So for the last 2 to 3 years, probably 3 years, I had gone part-time to help with the care for my mum and dad. And mum and dad lived 2.25 hour drive away from Poole in North Somerset. So I was travelling there every week and coming back again the same day if I was having to work the following day. That was exhausting in itself. And then the whole emotional and psychological drain on me was exhausting. And then having to obviously build in the time to plan, to mark, to prepare. I was working constantly. So I would be up about 6 in the morning. Sometimes I wouldn't go to bed until 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, because I was working late. There came a time where I knew I had to find a way of doing a challenge, even though I couldn't get away. Now, this wasn't because of work commitments, this was because of the family commitments I had with mum and dad. I knew I couldn't get away for like a 6 or 8 week walk. I had to be around. So I devised a walk called 100 Mappy Days, where I just set about walking a different walk using a map or a map app 100 times. And it didn't matter if it was a mile long or 20 miles long. It depended how much time I had. But, that actually saved my sanity completely and utterly, because even when I was working really hard, I knew I had another walk to potentially go and do that week. And if I only had time to go and do 2.5 miles, I'd go and do it. But I had a real focus, and then I'd come back and I'd I'd upload all my photographs, and write about it in my spreadsheet and mark down how far I'd gone. And so that having that focus was important to me. And I have to say, podcasts as well saved my sanity throughout that time too. I mean, I think I came close to really suffering with my mental health at that point, because there were so many demands on me from lots of different angles, and I just didn't know how I was going to cope. I still had to be a good teacher, I had to be a good daughter, had to be a good wife. There were all these demands. And so I would drive home from my parents, lose myself in a podcast. I'd get home, go to work, and then get to go off on another mappy day somewhere wonderful. Yeah.
It sounds like the 100 Mappy Days kind of managed to give you that bit of, I wouldn't say headspace, but that other distraction away from the stresses and strains of everyday life.
Yeah, it was a distraction, but it absolutely was headspace. You really have got that is the word. It's that outdoor medicine I refer to quite a lot, that sometimes if you just need to go and walk around the block, sometimes that's all you need, just to clear your head, solve a few problems, potentially think something through. But you just need to walk away from the situation that you're in currently, just to get that clarity in your brain. It's a brain fog, just get that clarity, go outside, be in nature. And if you're not surrounded by nature, if you're in a city or if you're in a town, actually just getting the fresh air, it still works.
And was that challenge and that headspace, was that feeding in then, was that around the same time as you were working towards the decision of leaving teaching?
Yes, I guess it was the latter part of that. It was. So I had planned to do 100 Mappy Days in 1 year. So that would work out roughly to be 2 walks a week, which in the normal way I could have probably quite easily achieved. But with Dad being quite poorly, it just wasn't going to work. So I think, on the 50th day, that was the end of the first year. And I remember walking that in memory of Dad, because we lost him about 3 weeks prior to Christmas. And then the following year, I said, okay, right, well, I've made this challenge up. I make the rules, so I'm just going to bend them slightly. And I'm not normally one to do that. If I make rules on a challenge, I'm a bit of a stickler and a purist in that I've got to keep to them. But no, on this occasion I had to be flexible. So it spilled over into the second year, and I did another 50 in the second year. And it was through that 50 where things really started to propagate, and I could see that growing into something bigger. I think there was a definite moment. In January, I knew I really want to leave. I've got to do this. If I don't do this now, I'm going to go bonkers. And then in March or April of that year, I think it was March, I went on a school trip skiing in the Alps. I'd never been skiing before. That was another head right out moment.
Wow.
I'm afraid of heights, and I've never skied in my life, and so I learned how to ski, and I was absolutely loving it. Terrified, there were some real jelly leg moments, but I was really enjoying it. And then on day 4 or 5, I think it was day 5 of 8 days skiing, one of the students clipped the back of my skis. We were stationary. I mean, we weren't even moving, we were stationary, and she was just moving into position, and she just clipped the back of my skis, and I went down and I tore my ACL and my MCL in my knee, and partially dislocated my kneecap, and I was not airlifted. I can't think what the word is. But anyway, I had ski rescue, mountain rescue, down to the nearest clinic, and was then on crutches for 2 months. Not able to go back to work. I'd already handed my notice in at this point, and I wasn't able to go back to work for the last half of that last term. No, the first half of that last term, I beg your pardon. But I thought that was going to be a time where it was going to drive me crazy because I was stuck indoors and not able to do all the things that I'd normally do. But that gave me real solid thinking time where I wasn't having to deal with school stuff, but I was able to really start thinking about, okay, what am I going to do with my life once I've left? And how are we going to make it work? How are we going to oil these wheels to actually get them moving smoothly? And although I still didn't actually know what I was going to properly by the time I left in July, I had signed up with the supply agency, and I just had to keep my fingers crossed that work would start coming in September. So yes.
Crikey, what a terrible injury. Like we both empathise with you, Zoe, because we've both had cruciate injuries, and I wouldn't wish them on anybody. So as you were describing that, my stomach was clenching. Totally appreciate what a terrible injury is. But I never thought there could be a kind of a silver lining to such a bad injury. But it sounds like if it can come at a good time, it kind of did, in a way, to give you again that headspace and that thinking time away from all the stresses of work, etc.
Yeah,
to figure out what actually am I going to do now.
Yeah, it was very therapeutic, and because we had figured that we were going to leave the house and we were going to rent the house out and come and move up onto the narrowboat up here in Wales, we both knew that we were going to have to do a major clear out as well. And I mean, I don't know about you, but we are both a collector of things. We were both guilty of that. And I had so much stuff I had to go through. And so that became my new focus, and there are videos of me going through, my clothes drawers with things in that I hadn't worn for sort of 5 or 6 years, and then me in tears because I have to get rid of all of these dresses or skirts that I hadn't worn in 15 years, but they were bringing back memories. It's amazing how clothes bring back memories from when you wore them at a particular time, and that was what I was trying to shift. I was trying to move away from that attaching sentiment to objects, so that I could release myself from having to hang on to all this stuff. So yes, it was a cleansing time, and I got rid of so much stuff in that 6 or 8 weeks I was off.
Sounds like a good time, and you achieved a lot in that space of time. Just in terms of, obviously you've made this massive life-changing decision to leave teaching, and then yourself and your husband decide somehow to then go and live on your narrowboat in South Wales. How did you reach that decision? Because that is also quite unique.
Yes, the boat's been here for a long time, and Mike had it long before we got together as a couple. It's always been his man cave, his bolt hole. And so when we did come up here, it had to have a little bit of a Zoe touch to it to try and de-man cave it. But the decision came because I realised, and I think Mike realised too, that it wasn't sustainable for me to keep travelling from Poole to North Somerset every week. Even though it's only 75 miles, this was to go and see my mum, to be with my mum. So although it's only 75 miles, it's not on big roads. There's no dual carriageways. It's all like A and B roads. And it's a long journey, 2.25 hours each way. And so just the driving is tiring. And we worked out that from the boat to Mum's house is an hour door to door. So that in itself is a no-brainer. I've always wanted to write as well. And Mike is very encouraging of me with regards to that, and wanted me to get started on that. And he was basically saying, if we move to the boat, if you think you can cope with living in a smaller space, we move from a 3-bedroom house, garage, garden, into a 40-foot narrowboat that's only 6'10" wide. If you think you can manage that, then as long as you're doing a couple of days a week supply teaching, then we will be able to sustain financially ourselves so that you can write. So that was the plan. It was to be able to get stuck into my writing and my artwork, which actually I haven't really done much of. I haven't had time to. I just need to focus myself in the writing at the moment. But yeah, so to focus on the writing and focus on being able to get to Mum much quicker, being able to get to her in a much better frame of mind. I'm not tired. I'm able to support her better because I'm not cranky, because I've been driving for 2.25 hours. So yeah, that was where our decision came from. And I didn't know if I would be able to do it, but I do know that I'm a flexible person. I do know that I can bend and sway with whatever life throws at me. I do know I can do that. But I'd lived in Dorset for 30 years, so it was a tough decision. But once we'd made that decision, it was like, okay, come on, this is another adventure. Let's bring it on. we can do this. And then the adventure just changed into something else completely. I mean, this is hilarious. So we went on holiday. It was our first overseas holiday in 5 years. Oh, 4 years. 4 years. We went to New York last January. And as we came back, the pandemic was only just really kind of whispering at the shores of the UK. It hadn't really properly reached. We had booked a van in February to move a lot of our big items of furniture and electrical things out of the house because we were planning to move in March. So we got rid of things to my daughter's house in Bristol. Some things went to my mother's house in North Somerset. We put some things into storage in Weston-super-Mare that we definitely wanted to keep, and the other things got sold. I mean, our bed was sold in January, so we had no bed anyway at that point. But we moved everything out. So there was no fridge, no freezer, no washing machine, no bed, no TV. It was almost an empty house. I think we had 2 chairs and a fold-up table, and a sofa. We did have a sofa because we knew that was being collected just before we were due to move. And we were due to leave to come up to the boat on the 28th of March. And what happened on the 23rd of March?
Oh my goodness.
Lockdown. And it was like, okay, right, this is interesting. So we can't leave the house. We are stuck in an empty house with not really enough to keep us going, but we can probably try. We did have our camping gear. Our camping gear was still there, hilariously. So yeah, in fact, within the first week of lockdown, we did actually put the tent up in the front garden and camped in that. But no, essentially, Ali, we glamped in our house for 4 months. And we were loaned a guest bed from a neighbour, and after a few weeks of sleeping on that, I was crying in agony because the mattress was so terrible. So we gave that back. In fact, we gave the mattress back, but we kept the bed base, and then we bought a new mattress for the boat. So the boat mattress is only 4 feet wide, so we shoved this on top of the divan, the 4'6" divan base, and that was good. That worked.
Oh my goodness.
And then, but other than that, it just, Mike just did all the bits of decorating and the sort of the things that he would have done to the house later on in between tenants. He did in that 4 months. So our new tenant got a house that was absolutely tip top, and yeah, it was looking good. So we left on July the 14th or 13th, I think it was, to come up here, and yeah, it was good to be up here after all that time.
What a story. Lockdown 1, and now look where we are. Lockdown 3, or is it 4? Yes. I don't know. I've lost track.
I've lost track, yeah, because we had that firebreak lockdown in Wales, didn't we? And then now we're into 3. Yeah, so I think it is 3.
It hasn't got any better.
No.
You've certainly been thrown a curveball there in terms of having to adapt your plans and start your canal boat adventure a little later than you expected. You mentioned tenants, so are you renting your house out at the moment?
Yes, we are. So yes, at least the mortgage is taken care of. So regardless of whether I can work or not, which I haven't done a lot of since September because of the virus, as a supply teacher, there hasn't been a huge call for me here as yet, and I'm hoping that's going to change. But yeah, the tenant is in. She loves the house, and so that is just ticking along nicely in the background and looking after itself.
Superb. So when you do actually get the chance to get to the canal boat officially in July and get your stuff in and settle in, was it what you expected in terms of canal boat living? Were there any major challenges, or was it quite eye-opening?
I think I was just in absolute awe of it to begin with. Although, I always knew it was going to be challenging to begin with, because it was trying to find places to put things and spiders. Gosh, the spiders that had taken up residence in here. Some of them were like, I don't know what they'd been taking some kind of protein powder, I think, because they were flexing their muscles big time at me. And there were a few choice words. I'd been learning the ukulele since last Christmas, and I remember I've kind of got this little nook where I squeeze my ukulele on a shelf up in the roof of the boat, and I pulled the ute down, and this spider dropped down onto the table, and I let out a little squeal. Spiders, that's one of the things in my kind of things that I'm frightened of that I haven't yet managed to sort out in terms of being able to hold a spider. So I've got to deal with that at some point. I did hold a tarantula, I don't know, Langley or somewhere like that a few years ago, but that felt different. But the ones that move quickly, across the floor in front of you or on the ceiling, I have an issue with that. So spiders were an issue. And actually since then, I would say our biggest issue on the boat is condensation. That is our big bugbear, and we battled with it over the winter, to the point where we actually had to move off the boat for 3 nights whilst Mike insulated the bottom end, the bed end of the boat, because we had pulled the mattress out one day, and the mattress was almost like it was sat in a pool of water. I mean, it was terrible. So we pulled the mattress out to dry it out, had fans on, we lit the fire to kind of get some warmth through, but we also had all the windows open. And yeah, Mike put some insulation up down there, put tongue and groove panelling up to kind of make it look nice, and we moved back in, and that did make a difference, but things were still getting wet. And then just about 6 or 8 weeks ago, I just had this realization that perhaps a dehumidifier might help. I don't know why I didn't think of it before. You know, we do have mains hookup here. We're quite lucky. And so, yeah, we bought a dehumidifier, and, you know, that's been an absolute game changer. And we've become quite obsessed with how much water it's collected in the bowl each day or each night. You know, some days, especially if we bring wet washing into the boat to dry, you know, it can collect up to 3 pints of water within an evening, which is quite shocking when you think how much moisture that is normally putting out into our atmosphere.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So when you started to live on the boat, you're obviously in the middle of summer. I can't remember what summer was like last year. It's all a bit of a blur, 2020.
It wasn't too bad. So
then heading into the winter months, how you've talked a bit about the condensation and issues with that. So in terms of the practicalities of canal boat living, how do you keep warm? You know, how do you keep warm and cozy?
Yeah, so we do keep warm and cosy on here. We've got a lovely little wood burner, which heats up the immediate space around it. We do also have central heating, so there's it looks just like a regular house radiator. In fact, we've got 3 radiators here, and that's connected to a system that is powered by the diesel down in the tank at the other end of the boat. And what else? We also have an electric blanket. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Oh, that is just heaven. Just climb even now, where it's not so cold now, but you know, it's like about 9 o'clock. You know, one of us will say to the other, have you turned the bed on? Oh, that sounds like it could be something completely different. But it's like, no porn here. So yeah.
That's a podcast.
Yes. So one of us will go down and turn the blanket on, and it's dual control, so I could have mine on the highest setting if I want to, and Mike can have his on 1 or 2, you know, not so warm. And it's just absolutely divine, just climbing in and feeling this warmth radiating up through your body. It's wonderful. So I tend to sleep with mine on 1 all night. And I learned some years ago when it was on my first long distance walk, I was talking to the supplier of a sleeping bag that I was buying, and he said that women tend to sleep colder than men. And I thought that was really interesting. And it so far, you know, that has rung true. That it stayed exactly to what he said. So Mike sleeps without the blanket on, and I sleep with mine on low, because he just generates quite a lot of heat on his own. So that's been fabulous. And there was something else I was going to say. The other thing I did find that was a little, not tricky, but it's just one of those things that I think when you're in a house you take for granted. So the only time that I can honestly say that I get cold is either first thing in the morning when I get out to physically have to put the heating on, and when it was -5 here up on the canal, you know, that is really hard going then, trying to get out of bed into a cold boat to put the heating on. But also, when it did get to those real kind of minus temperatures, I had to sleep with a buff on my head. Because what happens is that the boat, it starts off warm when you go to bed, but even if you've got your electric blanket on, your head is out of all of that. It's nowhere near the electric blanket, it's not under the duvet, it's on top of the pillow. It's the thing that's going to get cold. And a couple of nights I woke up and I didn't understand why I woke up, and then I realized it was because my head was cold. And I thought, okay, well, when I'm camping, I put a buff on my head or I wear a hat, so I'll just treat it like I'm out bivvying, so I'll stick a buff on my head, and that worked a treat. So it was no hardship really to have to do that.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I know it has been pretty cold, like you said, down to -5, and we had a bit of snow as well, didn't we, across South Wales, just for good measure. Yes. It's not been the toughest of winters, but it's certainly, the temperatures have dropped. So I empathise with, in terms of trying to keep place warm. We're in a static caravan, which I didn't think we would be at this period in our lives, but we've embraced it, and we've had different challenges with keeping that warm. But more recently, we've celebrated when we haven't had to have the gas fire on because the weather's got milder. So it's like we're getting out of winter now, which is really promising.
Yes, and living in the way that we do, you do tend to notice you have those finely tuned observations of the weather and of your surroundings, don't you? It's something about, because I've lived in a caravan as well, static caravan, and I know that you appreciate those smaller things that are actually really the bigger things.
Oh, that's absolutely so true. So in terms of running costs for a narrowboat, I'm trying to think now, if anybody's thinking of moving into narrowboat life, canal boat living, do you see it? I'm assuming it's a lot less expensive, than running a house and all the associated bills and stuff. Have there been any financial surprises, or has it been a good cost saving exercise?
It's definitely been a good cost saving exercise. Yes, I mean it's very much cheaper than living in a house, and can be as comfortable. I think the things to consider is make sure that if you're thinking of buying a narrowboat, make sure that if you're doing it up, that you insulate it. So make it an all-season boat as opposed to just a summer boat, which is what our boat is. It really is just a summer boat because it's not insulated all the way through. I would suggest that you think about whether you want to be a permanently moored boat or a cruiser. So a cruiser, we used to call ourselves pirates before we had a mooring. we were pirates, and we just used to constantly cruise the canal, and it basically means that every 2 weeks you have to move on. You're nomadic. You moor in one place, stay there for a couple of weeks, and then move on to the next place, stay there for 2 weeks, and then move on to the next place. And that's great for some people, but if you've got a car as well that you have to keep going back and moving the car to, I mean, that can be a little bit of a headache. And if you've got work commitments that need to keep you in a certain place, that's also not so good. If you are able to work remotely, then obviously that would work great. So mooring fees will depend on, who you're paying. So is it a marina? Is it a privately owned space on the canal? What else do we pay for? We pay a license fee to the Canal and River Trust, and we put in diesel. I haven't worked all this out. I think Mike's worked all this out, and I haven't taken on board the figures. But yeah, so we put in diesel probably once every 6 or 8 weeks. We use more diesel throughout the winter because although we're not cruising around regularly, we are using diesel for the hot water and the heating. We move the boat over the canal to fill up with water once a week. That's just a regular routine now, every Sunday. We obviously don't pay for water. But we do pay for our electricity. So we have an electric hookup, and we have an arrangement with the owner of the land on which we're moored and where we're hooked up, that we work out how many units we've used. We have like a little meter attached to our electric hookup that works out how many units we've used, and so we pay that quarterly. But it is still cheaper. We're not having to pay sewerage, we're not having to pay water charges, or any of the other things that come with a house. It really has dramatically reduced our costs.
Superb. And what about the practicalities of things like you mentioned, bringing damp or wet washing into the boat? Is that something you do off the boat, or you've got a washing machine on the boat?
No, you can put washing machines on boats, so that is possible. Alice, which is the name of our boat, isn't big enough for that, and if we upgrade her at some point, we will make sure that we have a washing machine on the boat. But no, currently we actually have a derelict chapel outside of Abergavenny, and so we have put a washing machine into the chapel, and that's where we do our washing. And it is pretty hilarious because this is a 150-year-old chapel with floorboards that aren't built for a washing machine that will go at 1400 RPM. The first time I switched it on, Mike had built it up on top of a plinth to keep it up off of the floor, because sometimes the chapel floor floods. It's right next to a river. So he put it up on top of a plinth, and I watched this washing machine basically wobble and walk its way to the point where it was going to fall off of the plinth, and I was just screaming no. I made this leap over to the washing machine, trying to hold it on with both hands and switch it off at the same time. It's really difficult when it's going round so fast. So yes, he came back, he built up blocks to hold it in place, and now I only turn it on at a maximum of 1000 RPM. But we can still sit. We sit on a chair in front of the wood burner in the vestry, and as it's going round and round, the whole floor is bouncing up and down. I mean, it's the weirdest sensation. So, yes, that is quite a thing.
Brilliant. Just kind of dipping in a little bit, I'm conscious of time as well, and I think we could talk about your walks for a whole different episode, but you mentioned about the time you've got now, you're wanting to use it towards writing, and do I take it you're going to be writing some more books? Is that kind of part of your future plans and possibly future income goals as well?
Yes, it is. I mean, there are other goals as well, which I can't share at the moment, unfortunately. Ooh. But that's exciting. So watch this space. But yes, I am 78,500 words into my first adventure memoir, which is about the South West Coast Path, because that was where my journey started. But I have written a list of books that I want to write, and I think I'm up to about 6 at the moment. That's what's building up. Some of them are fiction, some of them are non-fiction, and I did write a children's book. Let's see, how old is my daughter? My daughter's 26 this year, so 21 years ago. This is shocking, and this is a real Zoe, give yourself a kick up the backside moment, because 21 years ago I wrote a children's story in rhyme, which I was really proud of, and I wanted to get it published as a children's storybook, but I did not want to submit it to a publisher until I had a couple of illustrations to show them myself, because I wanted to illustrate it. And I never did. I never had the time. And that was the whole teaching thing. I never had the time to do those things. And my mum still keeps asking me, have you done Laura's book yet? Have you done Laura's book yet? And are you going to do that after the South West Coast Pub? It's like, So yes, that is also on the cards. So I would like to illustrate that book, and interestingly, that is a story about a group of adventurous toys, Chop's Adventurous Toys. I don't know if it will remain with that name, but it was interesting that I'd not actually landed in the world of adventure at that point, but I was still talking about adventures. So yeah, something in that maybe.
Brilliant. And yeah, in terms of time, it's such a valuable resource, isn't it? And I can kind of relate to how time just passes you by, not just in the pandemic, but life in general. And you think, I'll get round to that project. And it sounds like a real passion project as well. And I guess they're the kind of things that we're constantly putting on the back burner. We'll get round to it. We'll do it another day, because there are all these other things that we perceive are so important to do first. But now it sounds like you've reached this point in your life, and with a really supportive partner as well, who, is kind of given you, or well, you're doing it together in terms of the lifestyle that you've got now, and having that time to sit down and be able to write and follow your passions and your dreams again.
It is, and yes, I mean, as far as Mike goes, I mean, he has been so supportive, 100% of what I'm doing. You know, he still goes out to work, and you know, for a while there, I was really feeling that guilt almost of, well, I'm just sitting here at home, I'm on the boat, and I'm sat in front of my laptop, I'm just writing, you know. And it's that I had to retrain my brain to think I am not just writing, I am working. I might not be getting paid for this yet, but it will pay dividends later on. And I'm not professing by any means to think I'm going to, you know, be making six figures or anything like that. It's if I can just get my story out there, I will feel that sense of achievement. Okay, I really want to feel that, but I also would love to be able to earn some kind of income from it, even if it's only a small income, because I think if I've got multiple sources of income coming in, which is what the plan is, those multiple sources of income make up to one pot that, with our simple lifestyle that we have now, should still make it sustainable. And it's far more interesting, and it's also, I won't have all my eggs in one basket as well. So if something fails, no, I don't like the word fail, I hate the word fail, if something doesn't go the way I've planned it, then I've got something else to fall back onto. And that's what is so exciting, is that there are all these avenues to work on, but I just have to, or I have been working on looking at ways of focusing on each of them without stretching my time too much. And that's where my teaching planning skills have come in. I've gone back to my old long-term, medium-term and short-term planning skills that I used in my life as a teacher, and I'm using that to really good effect, and I'm building up routines that are good habits. And yeah, for the most part, it's working. My morning routine, my morning habits are brilliant. My nighttime routines are not so good, but I'm working on that. So yes, it's interesting. It's definitely no 2 days are ever the same, even with the routine. There's always something going on here, and I absolutely love seeing the people out on the towpath. So I don't, even throughout lockdown, I don't feel lonely. I don't feel like I haven't had any social interaction, because I can just wave at people, or I jump out of the front of the boat and I keep dog biscuits at the end of the boat, and I feed all the local dogs. So I have this stream of dogs coming and looking at me with doe eyes, saying, well, where's my biscuit then?
Yes. Great. Do you feel like you've found a balance that you've perhaps been craving for for some time now?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, I have, in that it's wonderful here. I'm balanced between the work life and nature. In terms of balancing how much work I'm doing, no. And I think that's down to me. That's me and my own. I've just got myself to answer to for that, and I think I said to you before, I just throw myself into things and I will just work at them. And yeah, so I am still working a lot, but it's now manageable, and it's now what I want it to be. And if I don't want to work of an evening, for example, I won't. And we have got certain nights of the week where I don't work, and we do other things. We have a Zoom night one night with a friend of mine where Mike and I play the ukulele and the guitar, me very painfully. But for a friend who lives on her own, we call it the twang along. We have a twang. It's the twang along, not the sing along. And we have a few drinks and we chat and we catch up, and it feels like a really social night, even though we're not actually with her. We're with her, and so that's become quite a thing now. We've been doing that since beginning of January. I don't think I will ever quite get that balance, if I'm honest, Ali, and that is just me. but that's fine. You know, if I see it becoming an issue, then, you know, I can pull those strings to change it. But at the moment,
Sure.
it's working towards other things, more, you know, so exciting projects, and it's just the wheels are in motion, and sometimes it's hard to stop those wheels. And you know so, as well as anybody about wheels.
Oh yeah. I haven't been on wheels for a while, but yeah, do need to get back on wheels at some point.
Yes.
So just kind of wrapping up a little bit then, and thinking about the future, is Canal Boat Life something that you see yourself doing for some time, or, you know, are there other plans, other life goals in the mix?
Good question. The boat will be here as long as we need her to be here. There are some other possibilities, but I would like to stay on the boat for as long as I possibly can. A lot depends on Mum as well, so we need to be here for as long as she needs us to be here too. But then, you know, as far as adventures go, you know, there are some big adventures that we want to do, which we are unable to do at the moment because of family commitments. But if we've got the boat, and if we're living on the boat, then those big adventures will be definitely more manageable, let's say, because we haven't got to leave an empty house. You know, the house is looking after itself. So if we're just leaving a boat and going off on a big adventure, then that is certainly far more doable. So yes, there are some other things potentially in the pipeline, but yeah, I can't say too much. I hope I've given you a little sort of a little seed there, a little something. But yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love hearing about people's secret plans, even though they can't talk about them, but you still get excited for them, even though you don't know anything about them.
Yeah, it's like hearing an author speaking about their book, you know, and they're wanting, because they're so excited about it because it's their baby, and they want to tell you about XYZ, but they don't want to give away the plot or the you know, some of the big things that happen in it. It's kind of a bit like that.
Well, what we can mention, and just to wrap up, is that obviously you've got an extensive history of long distance walking, and as I said, you know, we could talk about that on a different episode perhaps. You've walked the South West Coast Path solo. You described that as a life-changing 7-week solo walk. You were the first woman to walk the Wales Coast Path, after young Ari Kane actually ran it, didn't she?
She did, yes.
Yeah, crazy lady. Offa's Dyke, the Mendip Way, the Camino de Santiago, the Up North Triple Crown, which there's a story behind that in terms of did you achieve the triple or not. You'd have to listen to another podcast episode. And the Mappy Days, actually, one thing I did want to speak to you about, the bridge bagging.
Yes.
Are you in the middle of that at the moment?
I am in the middle of that.
Let's finish on that.
Yes, so that is massive, and yet so simple. So we're obviously living on the canal, 35-mile canal. I wanted a challenge that would be lockdown proof, that I could, because in Wales we can't travel to go for our exercise at the moment. So I wanted to be able to leave home and go for a walk, but I still wanted it to be a challenge. So I devised this challenge called the Monmouthshire-Brecon Bridge Bagging Challenge, where I walk from home to a bridge and back again, and then from home to another bridge another day and back again. And again, a little bit like 100 Mappy Days, it's about deciding what walk I can manage in the time that I've got available. And so I created a spreadsheet where I've got all 134 bridges on the spreadsheet, and I know exactly what distance it is from my home. And I've done 16 bridges now out of the 134. But what I found completely mind-blowing was that over 35 miles of canal, going backwards and forwards to each bridge, is 3,412 flipping miles.
Wow.
I was like, I can't believe that. And I told Mike, and he went, "You're not very good at maths. Are you sure you got that right?" And just like, yes, I have. I've done it over and over again, the calculations, and I've put it into a spreadsheet. So yes, that is the plan. I think it's going to take me a couple of years to do. I don't think I'm going to do it in 1 year, because that's a lot of walking. There's quite a few 30 and 40 mile days in there. So that's kind of getting into ultra areas, and I'm not running anymore. I just found it too, it was just causing me too many injuries. So I will be walking them all. Yes, all done on foot, not cycled. There we go.
Absolutely brilliant. And where can people follow your crazy bridge bagging and previous adventures, Zoe? Where can they find you online?
So online, I'm Head Right Out on all socials, so Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and I'm headrightout.com is my website. So I am a little bit behind on updating with my bridge bagging on Instagram, but I will do my best to get that up together. I've also got a group on Facebook called the Head Right Out Hub. So and that's a women only group. So any ladies wanting to come along and join us there, it'd be lovely to say hello to you.
Brilliant. We'll share those links, obviously, so everyone can look you up and maybe ask some questions if they've got anything burning that we haven't covered in this episode. Zoe, thank you so much for talking to us today. I hope people have been inspired by your big decision to leave teaching and your other big decision about accommodation and living on a canal boat, and also what you intend to do in the future, and how you're juggling these multiple little passion projects, and the fact that you hope to turn them into an income as well. I think that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ali. It's been an absolute honour to speak to you today, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope that Zoe's story has inspired you to maybe change direction in life or live life a little more alternatively.
What did you like most about Zoe's story?
Even as a perfectionist, she managed to avoid the pressures of burnout, and she managed to find that alternative that kind of gave her buzz, I think is the word that she described, buzz in her life.
Yeah, I think for me, obviously, to make a massive career change and to leave a profession like teaching, I guess, must have been a huge decision, but her passion seemed to really shine through, and it sounded like she always had this yearning to do something different, but perhaps never the confidence or the kind of, the opportunity. I also loved how she described her first long distance walk as life-changing, and that seemed to sow a seed in the back of her mind as well, in terms of, kind of allowing herself in time and over the years to explore how she might be able to get a venture more into her lifestyle. And again, that came from being able to leave teaching as well. So yeah, another great episode. High five.
If you enjoyed this episode, we'd be very grateful if you could share it with your friends and family so that we can reach more people with these amazing stories.
Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. You can also follow our own adventures by connecting with our website and social media channels. The links are in the show notes.
We wanted to say a quick thank you to the people who have rated or reviewed our podcast. We're really humbled by the really positive feedback.
Yeah, it's been amazing, thank you. So that's it for now. Look forward to connecting with you on the next show. Until then, take care and stay safe. Bye.
Bye!